Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Dr. Pundit, where we talk about music, not medicine. And it's also where I don't feature any YouTube shorts, just full-length quality episodes on this channel. And on this edition, it's another edition of Musical Musings, where I basically think about some sort of relationship that music has with the greater concept of appreciating it, listening to it, artists, songs, you name it. And on this edition of Dr. Pundit, I want to talk about a couple of acts who were known for one big hit, but they didn't need to be one-hit wonders to be memorable, or to be a little bit more specific, they would not really be considered one-hit wonders because they do have a huge fan base and a catalog, and just happen to use that to capitalize on that one big song to add to their overall place in musical history. And I want to talk about Sinead O'Connor and Devo. So let's get right into it. Now, if you call these acts one-hit wonders, they usually fade into obscurity after one of their major hits light up the charts. That's more or less the nature of being quote-unquote a one-hit wonder. You shine bright, then you disappear. However, a few bands, few musicians have managed to be memorable and downright legendary despite only having one massive hit. And what makes these musicians memorable despite having only one hit? Well, I think it comes down to playing the pop star game differently than most artists. Now, even if you weren't around in the 1980s or even the 1990s, when Sinead O'Connor was at her peak, I would probably say between 1988 and 1991, you probably still recognize her name. Image and hit song, the number one smash, Nothing Compares to You. Now, surprisingly, that song was O'Connor's only claim to fame, and a cover of a Prince song, Nothing Compares to You, hit number one across the charts internationally when it was released in 1990. O'Connor had a few additional hits, but none of them even cracked the top 40 in the US. So, is O'Connor technically a one-hit wonder? Or if that's really the case, why is she still so memorable today?
It's been 7 hours and 50 days since you took your light away. I go out every night and sleep all day since you took your love away.
It all comes down to one very simple fact about O'Connor, which she reiterated herself on numerous occasions. She was not a pop star, she was a protest singer. O'Connor was a personality and a musician in equal amounts, and she drew attention constantly, from her Saturday Night Live debacle in which she tore up a picture of the Pope, which we really can't show because Saturday Night Live pretty much has a monopoly on their content being shown against fair use here on YouTube, to her adamant attempts to draw attention to racism, human rights violations, and feminist endeavors throughout her life. And her intention was to always draw attention to herself as a conduit of hope and awareness, trying to wake people up to the international horrors that were happening worldwide. And I think more or less she was successful. And you could argue that she has a legacy after her death. Now, unlike Sinead O'Connor, Devo, second act I'll talk about in this edition of the show, didn't have any objective politics or greater sort of cause to promote through their music. But what made them memorable despite having only one major hit was their unique mix of satire and social comedy, performed with a very specific sense of humor. New wave as a genre was still pretty new when Devo hit the scene, and nobody knew what to make of it at that time yet. Whip It managed to become one of the most defining American contributions to the genre. And surprisingly, though, Devo didn't have as big a hit outside of that 1980 track. Now, Whip It was their only top 20 hit in the US, though they did have a few additional hits that made it lower on the charts internationally. And to put it simply, Devo is still memorable today, more than 40 years later, despite being known for that one big hit. And I think it's because they knew how to play the game. They were dedicated just to being weird, for lack of a better term. And that's a good way. A good weird, I suppose. Their energy dome costumes, their syrupy synth tunes, their odd yet fascinating concepts such as de-evolution, all of these elements influenced multiple genres that followed new wave, and Devo is still unforgettable today. So when you really think about it, yes, you could apply one-hit wonders to each of these artists, but you really would be fooling yourself, and nobody really would buy that because of the aura around their persona and the way it'll probably still shine 100 years from now with these two acts and their one big hit each. Think about it. I'm Michael Douglas, and if you like what you see here on the channel, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe. And until the next time, as the late great Barry White used to say, let the music play, and I'll see you on the next episode.